I think the quarterback of the future for Texas A&M is going to be the quarterback of the now. I think going into the Swamp, getting a dominant win 33-20 against Florida, Marcel Reed played fantastic. And that's what I want to talk about today, because we could talk about how Texas A&M did not win a road game since 2021. Thank God that fact is over. Then we could talk about this is the first road win in the Mike Elko era in general. We could talk about Billy Napier most likely getting fired by the next 48 hours is what it feels like, or at least it's going to happen in some time. Like, there's no question on if he's going to get fired. It's more of a question of when. But what I wanted to do today is something a little bit different that I have never done on this channel. It's to talk about a quarterback debate in the lens of a scheme. And so what we're going to do is talk about why I think Marcel Reed is a better scheme fit for Colin Klein, the offensive coordinator for Texas A&M. But let's talk about the debate in general, because there's going to be a lot of people potentially in the comment section that say that this is not a debate. Connor Weigman should not be the starting quarterback for Texas A&M. And if you've never been on this channel, go look at it. Just take a quick glance. By the way, thank you if you're going to actually do that. But I have talked about Connor Weigman a lot. I think he's a very good quarterback. Limited sample size, yes, and the injuries are starting to stack up, but I still think he's a good quarterback. I fear that the scheme and the timing of this injury just really does not go well with his favor. I think that if you were to start him, it's still going to work, but I feel like the fluidity of this offense is going to be better set with Marcel Reed. So I said this on Twitter too. I said, you can hype up Marcel Reed without bashing Connor Weigman, because objectively, he's still a great kid. I think he's super talented. The last thing the national media has seen from him was from that Notre Dame game. And I don't think that's a great representation of who he is as an actual player. And also, the more stories have come out that he injured that throwing shoulder that held him out of Florida during that Notre Dame game, very early on in that Notre Dame game. And I don't think that if you made any kind of a quarterback change, it would have changed the result of that football game, because I just didn't see it in the cards for Texas A&M. And I don't think throwing a redshirt freshman out there just randomly after halftime was going to change that, because of how complex the defense that Notre Dame plays. So we're going to talk about the two main reasons why I think Marcel Reed should play. And I've inferred to it throughout this video. First things first, it's the scheme. And so that's what we're going to dive into. I'm going to pull up the whiteboard. I'm going to show you what Connor Weigman versus Marcel Reed would look like just schematically, because I said this throughout my multiple takes trying to get this video off. I said, it just makes more sense for Marcel Reed. And I feel like I'm kind of assuming that you, the viewer, just automatically understands what I mean. And I get it if you do, but I think taking it to the next level and showing you a visual representation of what a mobile quarterback can do in a scheme that Colin Klein likes to run is going to make all the world of a difference in understanding why I think Marcel Reed's the better fit moving forward. I also will say this. If Mike Elko just goes with Connor Weigman, I'm fine with that. I completely think that he is capable enough to have a high-level performing season for the rest of the year. But I do think playing into the hot hand and having the momentum, especially knowing you're going into the bulk of your SEC play, is critical, and you don't want to miss this opportunity knowing how light of an SEC schedule it is, because it's still an SEC schedule, but you play all of your biggest games at home, and your three road games is Auburn, Florida, and Mississippi State. In South Carolina. Don't want to forget that one. We just saw what LSU had to go through. Those aren't easy games, but they're also not going to Georgia. They're not going to Bama. They're not going to Texas, Oklahoma. So they kind of dodged a bullet here. That's why I think making a definitive decision is so critical for this entire quarterback debate. So like I said, I'm going to pull up the whiteboard in the most simple way possible. I put a very common situation of what Colin Klein likes to put his players in. It's going to be trips on the right side with a tight end. Then you're going to go against the defense of a 4-3 look with a cover 4 shell, basically saying that these guys can drop back, this guy, and this guy, or it could be a cover 2 where this guy will go over here, this guy will go over here, and then they will sit in the flats. And then you have the linebackers who could do a multitude of different things. That's not the point, because it's a very basic look. But the point of this entire thing is to say, why does number 1 in white, the quarterback, fit better with Marcel Reed than it does with Connor Weigman? And one of the most simple ways I can put it, because, you know, I've made this video a couple times and I've continued my statement of, well, it's just because Marcel Reed is a little bit more athletic. He can make a couple more plays outside of structure. But why does Colin Klein prefer this? Why does Colin Klein want a mobile quarterback? Why does Colin Klein want this for his running attack. And that's something that I think visually showing is going to be more impactful. Colin Klein, of course, likes his quarterback power. He wants his quarterback to run to the right side or left side, pardon me, with, a block, maybe even pulling a guard, all these different things, right? And that's fine and dandy. That puts a lot of stress on number 6, puts a lot of stress on number 4, number 8, and anybody that's crashing to the left side. But what Colin Klein loves to do is manipulate right here. The linebackers, everything in the intermediate can make or break this offense, because as much as we could talk about the 1 through 4, the defensive linemen, what Colin Klein loves to do in this running attack is pull these players around, because a lot of the eyes of 6, 7, and 5 are watching to see who pulls to make their decision on what gap to attack, if they want to bounce around to the outside, all these different things. And that's what Colin Klein does best, is manipulating that all the traditional sense of pulling this guy, everything's going to go down this way, or potentially running a counter backwards to that this linebacker is going to think everything that he has been built up to in his entire life has been, if I read number 1 pulls this way, I need to go this way. In reality, it ends up going that way. And that's what makes this running attack so dynamic. And that's why a lot of people look at Colin Klein as a guru in the running game, because he takes a lot of the things that are traditional that manipulates these linebackers. In reality, he's doing the opposite thing. Not only that, he loves putting these players into motion. He loves pulling a wide receiver over here, just continuously moving the eyes of the linebacker, because if you can break past this layer, then you get to this one. Now you're dealing with a ton of green grass, and you're able to consistently get first downs. Then we can also look at what Marcel Reed looks like as a rushing threat, because we've talked about the motion, we've talked about the pulling guards, but when you have Connor Weigman here, and say we put, the tight end out wide, and it's just number 4 that they're going to read on a option look. Number 1 is going to crash down. Maybe they have some pulling guards, but then the other option is Marcel Reed or Connor Weigman runs that way. They're going to be looking at number 4's eyes to potentially crash down, and, maybe he's trailing this way. Pull it, go this way. Or he stands still waiting for, Marcel Reed to run this way, and then they just end up giving it to the running back. These are 2 big options in a very simple look. And so it's all to manipulate the eyes of the defensive linemen when we're talking about these option looks. And so when you have Connor Weigman at the quarterback position, this guy, more times than not, is not going to be sitting here waiting for Connor to come make a play. They're going to go crash the running back, because truthfully, Connor's just not that big of a threat of a runner. He's not that very dynamic. I think he's had flashes. He's not a complete statue in the pocket, but he's definitely not one that is going to put stress on these defensive linemen or even linebackers. And if they really wanted to, they could put a spy, and it's going to completely shut down any attempt of making a play, because Connor, at the end of the day, is going to want to make the play downfield throwing the ball. And one of the biggest issues A&M has ran into, especially during this Notre Dame game, is basically Notre Dame came out and said, we're going to man you up. This is really bad, by the way. This is not how a defense should look, but man you up, and we're going to man up the running back, and someone go make a play. Because at the end of the day, Connor is going to have to make a throw that is very, very difficult, or he is going to have to make a play with his legs, which he just athletically is not as gifted as a guy like Marcel Reed to be able to do that. And so when you're looking at a wide receiver core that all love to Ja'Day Walker, Moose Muhammad, Noah Thomas, these are not major separators. These aren't like the Evan Stewarts, the Tet McMillans, the Travis Hunter, all the different wide receivers that can create this major amount of separation. That Connor, if there's nothing there, it's basically a sack or a throwaway, versus Marcel, he's able to move around, and potentially even moving around creates the separation that, say it gets covered up by a dig route. This was just a dig route. I just want to give you a visual representation. Number 1 is completely covered, but because Marcel pulls around, he's able to adjust his route and find a soft spot in the zone, and then you get a chunk play. This is just something that you were not going to consistently get from Connor Weigman. And I know it may play into the whole idea that he's a statue, but this is just something that you're not going to consistently get when we're talking about, I guess, like Marcel. And Marcel's not perfect. A lot of the deep accuracy, especially once you got past like here, was not very consistent, and he was willing to push the ball downfield. But the biggest thing is if you're able to manipulate this layer right here consistently, we are talking about a lot of room downfield, because now you're putting a lot more stress on these safeties and potentially more busted coverages, because these linebackers in 2024 have a lot more of a larger role when it comes to coverages and how to handle a tight end potentially moving around. That's why Colin Klein loves using tight ends, because if you're manipulating this guy can run downfield and get completely open. I hope this gives you a good representation. Like, I understand I've been rambling a lot, but of why Marcel Reed, I think, is going to fit the scheme a lot better, and why Colin Klein prefers someone that can add this extra layer of stress on this layer, because you're going to get more explosives downfield. That's just how it's going to be. And the other option and the other reason is truly because I think the schedule just lines up a lot better for Marcel to have a lot more momentum for the rest of the year. Because the schedule at this point, Texas A&M is going to be playing Bowling Green next week, where Marcel Reed will most likely play, just to give Connor Weigman ability to fully rest up his shoulder, because clearly either from McNeese State to Wednesday or sometime in practice, it got tweaked. It may have gotten worse since the Notre Dame game. Something happened that it wasn't good enough for him to play. It got up all the way till game time for the Florida game to decide whether or not he should be playing football that day. And so I would say most likely he's going to get rested for a game against Bowling Green. So Marcel Reed's getting another opportunity, his second straight start, in which Bowling Green's no slouch. We saw what happened with Penn State. So they're going to be prepared for this game, I'd assume, and Marcel Reed's going to play very well. After that point, we are going into the bulk of SEC play. And I don't love the idea of rotating quarterbacks. We just played a team that was rotating a quarterback every single drive. And I understand that there's cases where there's teams that have really good quarterbacks, two of them to be exact. And you say, well, they have two. What are you talking about? I think if you don't have a distinct number one and a distinct number two, you really have none. I mean, look at Arch Manning and Quinn Ewers. The only reason why Arch Manning's getting the hype that he is because, well, outside of like him being a 5-star, but I'm saying right now, is because Quinn Ewers got hurt. None of this would be happening if Quinn didn't get hurt. It's not like Arch got put in because Quinn was playing bad. So I don't want a DJ Lagway and Graham Mertz situation. I don't want the idea of this talented guy behind the other one. And if I throw a pick on one drive, or if I go 3 and out on another drive, that I'm going to get pulled. These are two quarterbacks that need to play loose, especially Marcel. So we go to Arkansas the following week. It's a rivalry game. They tend to play us relatively close, even though they don't win a lot of them. I would rather have Marcel for that. You're giving him back-to-back weeks for a super green quarterback to build up momentum and go into another pivotal spot during the season. But if you go with Connor, you're risking a lot, because Taylor Green's damn near the biggest wild card in the entire college football world. I mean, I don't say that lightly. He has probably one of the highest ceilings and lowest floors. You don't know what you're going to expect from Taylor Green. And if you end up getting in a shootout, do you want the quarterback that has the continuity to potentially put up points in a quick way, like we saw with Marcel Reed? Because he was not perfect against Florida, but he could definitely get better. Then we go to Missouri, and I've segmented out Texas A&M's entire season into 4 chapters. What is the team from Notre Dame to Missouri, Missouri to LSU, LSU to Texas? And at that point, like, if we're talking about still a quarterback change, I don't like going with Missouri coming into Kyle Field and you're still not sure who your quarterback is, knowing that you have at Mississippi State, LSU, at South Carolina, New Mexico State, at Auburn, and then Texas. At this point, you got to make a definitive statement on what your quarterback is and rock with that. I understand Mike Elko might be comfortable with Connor, and I don't think he has any loyalty to, just give Connor the job because he's been with this program, because he didn't recruit him, or he may have. I don't know if, I don't think he recruited him here when he was the defensive coordinator, because that doesn't make sense. So what loyalty does he have to Connor Weigman? And I think Connor's a great player. I don't think we have to bash Connor Weigman, but if I was to make a decision from a bird's eye view from someone that's not in the building, and with the context of the scheme and the context of the schedule, I would go with Marcel Reed. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching Rush the Field. Thank you guys for giving me the time, giving me the opportunity to talk football with you. It truly does mean the world to me. And let me know if you like the little scheme, pulling up the board. I know it wasn't beautiful, but I also know for a fact all your football coaches don't make it look as pretty as they can be online. So thank you so much for once again watching today's video, and I will see you guys next time. We got a lot to talk about after week 3.